how is this going to benefit the community? And when housing projects came and requested tax benefits, I was the first one to negotiate mixed income to make sure we had affordable apartments incorporated into what would have otherwise been market rate projects. I was the one that developed a local labor policy inside it. Could we do better? Absolutely, and I intend to finish what I started. But these are important things that we've made progress on. We talk about the land bank. And sure, the land bank has certain challenges, but before the land bank, we weren't doing anything. Properties, slumlords were able to get away with not paying their taxes. The city never took their property. The properties were not taken care of. You have a property on your block that's vacant. You can't find the number for the slumlord who lives out in California. Because we were able to create the land bank, now at least you have a sign on the property, you know who to call. The city is now collecting taxes that they weren't previously collecting. We need to do better, especially on the south side, because as we all know on the south side, a lot of properties are being demolished, which in most cases is a good thing, because these are properties that are attracting crime, they're attracting arson and all sorts of other negative, bringing down property values. But we can't just demolish them and be done with it. We've got to plan and figure out how we're going to rebuild the community, because you can't demolish your way to progress. You need to address the problem, put together a plan, and rebuild the community up. That's what I have a track record of doing, and that's what I intend to do as mayor.
Raymond?
If I had $1 for every time I heard the word economic development, I could rebuild this city 100 times over. It's about people. And no one in City Hall should be writing a plan for property. I would establish community boards made up of people in the community saying, what is it that you need? We have to stop trying to be everybody's parent. I think that's a huge problem. Is it childcare? The economic development is the macro, but we miss out on the micro. Is it childcare? Is it transportation? Is it somebody's asking you to go to a job training for a month and they don't want to pay you? That's ridiculous. So my thing is, we have to have a prosperity plan. Thank you.
Okay. So there was a recent controversy over the land bank funding slated for demolitions of structures primarily on the south side of town. Over the years, the administration and City Hall have allowed the south side, even our struggling businesses corridor, to be gutted and left barren over the last 20 years. As mayor, will you can you commit to simultaneously putting in place a housing development plan of what are you going to do for those empty lots that have been empty and nothing has been done to them? What's your plan for a housing development plan? I'm going to start with Juanita.
I'll stand up because I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. Well, I started to talk about it in my last answer. I did not support the fact that we defunded the land bank. And quite frankly, it's because I didn't believe that we should defund something because it wasn't working. Because it wasn't, and it isn't. But the fact is, it is successful in many places of the city. And what we need to do is to put it in the places where it should be working and make sure it's working for the people of the communities that have houses boarded up on their left and on their right. So I see the land bank as a way to provide prosperity to our neighborhoods, because if you are focusing on what's happening on these streets, you're speaking with residents, and you're learning what are the ideas and ways that they would like to be responsible and accountable for their own neighborhoods, then respond to that. Find out what they want to do with these blighted houses. Do they want to take them down? Do they want a child care center? Do they want senior housing? We need to create a plan and a strategy where we're focusing on all of our neighborhoods at the same time. And I plan to do that. I think it's foolish for us to have a land bank plan that is focused in just a few neighborhoods, and our hope is that we'll raise enough funding to then trickle it down to the south side or to the near west side. That doesn't work. And quite frankly, it's not fair. What we need to do is have a plan that's in every pocket and every neighborhood in this city. It's working for every neighborhood. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Blackwell. The neighbors and the residents are part of the solution and telling us what they want, what they need, and tax dollars are going to those very resources.
We can go down the list, Ben.
So I mentioned the land bank earlier, and I'll talk a little bit more about it again. I cannot underscore the importance of the fact that before the land bank existed, the city was essentially turning a blind eye to this problem. The reason the land bank was created was not because the elected officials were saying we need to do something. It was because the people were saying that we need to do something. I went throughout the community back in 2007. I stood in front of the Dunbar Center. I had Mr. Pearsall, where are you? Tell me in no uncertain terms what the problems were in this community, and I listened. And I stood in front of the Assisi Center up on the north side, and I listened to the neighborhood, to the neighbors, and they said we have to do something. So we did something, and it is working. Is it working as well as it could be? Absolutely not. But again, we are making progress. The land bank is involved in every neighborhood. Again, I can't underscore enough, it's helping the city to generate revenue, which we continue to talk about. So why would we defund the land bank? Why would we reverse course? We identify what the challenges are to continue to make progress. Again, I think what's critical is that we incorporate better planning into the land bank, that we make sure that we're reinvesting in our neighborhoods, that we're building them back up, we're not just demolishing and walking away. But it's working. I will continue to say that, and I'm going to make sure that it continues to work and works even better for the city and for every neighborhood in the city.
Joe, I just want to repeat the question, just to refresh everybody's mind. So we're asking, as mayor, would you commit to a housing development plan to replace the structures that have been demolished?
Okay, but there needs to be a correction about the controversy. The controversy over the land bank was not to defund the land bank. The council voted to not fund it for this 1 year. My colleague is back there, Khalid Bey, will speak to it if you want him to also. We did not defund the land bank. The land bank has more money proportionately than the city of Syracuse's budget. What we did was say, we're going to take a breather. Why did we take that breather? Because 8 years ago, the city of Syracuse had some $68 million in what they call the rainy day reserve fund. And rather than do things like raise taxes or consolidate services or build relationships with the federal and state government, the city went its own way and ended up drying up that rainy day fund. So when we came to the budget this time, and we sat in caucus across party lines, and we looked at the budget, we said, my God, if we are to spend what the city budget department has asked, we will have less than 2 years of rainy day fund left. That meant we will have less than $14 million a year to balance the budget. Okay? If we did that, a year and a half from now, the thing that some of my colleagues up here have said is going to happen. There will be a state board, financial board, and you won't need a mayor. You won't need anybody here. We will have nothing to say. Wages and contracts and employee benefits as well as services will be determined by a financial review board. We on the council took a lot of grief. And there was a lot, I have to finish this, I'm sorry. There was a lot said we were defunding. We did not defund. What we said was, let's take a pause, let's re-examine the direction of the land bank, let's look at what's happening good, and then let's look at what's happening bad. The problem is with code enforcement in the law department. You can send all the inspectors out, as my colleagues know, and they can serve everybody, but when you have 700 cases or more sitting in the law department that are not going in front of a judge, Why would you, as an absentee landlord, pay one bit of attention to a city that serves you a notice? We are going to end that next year. The council, all my colleagues, whether it's me or whoever it is going to have a different approach. We are going to end that, and we are going to make sure that when the city said there's a code violation and people are living with rodents in their apartment, or they're living in a property that has no heat or water, that day is going to be over with starting January 1. Now, as far as the plan is concerned, and I'm sorry, because this has been, my entire life has been set up working with the neighborhood development, okay? Yes, we are going to have a plan. We are going to have a plan that takes into the needs of all people. No matter where they live, no matter what color their skin, no matter what economic background they come from. And it's going to be a plan that is going to create neighborhoods that are vibrant, diverse, and we are going to work with the community to do that. Government doesn't have the answer. The answer is sitting right out here. If we don't work together, there will be no city in the next couple of years. And we all need to realize that. Thank you so much.
Marty? Please
Thank
have
you.
respect for time.
I agree, and I'm going to do my best to differentiate myself. I'm actually going to answer the question. I'm going to try to stay within the time, which is very different than what's been going on. I will tell you first, I learned of the land bank was, I believe it was in 2007. I was on the county legislature at the time, and the individual to my left, Ben Walsh, came to me and said, and the county legislature played an integral part of this as the one of the entities to create it, and said, we're going to create this land bank, and here's how it's going to work. I think we're through step one of that, and step two is what we're talking about next is, now how do we redevelop? That was all part of the plan. That was all part of the initial discussion, and Joe touched on, and he's absolutely right, is the plan is to bank the land, which is literally what the name of the organization is. It's actually the Greater Syracuse Land Development Corporation, I believe, but known as land bank. We're going to bank the land. We're going to take that land because, quite frankly, what don't we have in the city of Syracuse right now? It's not like we can expand like the town of Onondaga or these other places who have a ton of land. We didn't have that luxury. Unfortunately, how we then acquired the land was we took these dilapidated properties. We forced foreclosure on so many vacants first. I know it then hit owner-occupied, which I was completely against. But I know, and I'm running out of time too, but one very important thing that I have to touch on is that the county comptroller and myself did a joint audit of the land bank. And one of our findings is exactly what we're seeing right now, is we said, unless this is funded, this is not sustainable until economic development starts, because you're getting all these properties, unless you're funded by the county, the state, the federal, whoever the case may be, it is not sustainable. It's exactly what we said. And while I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with my friend Joe Nicoletti, you can call it what you want. If you give them $1.5 million less than what they got last year, it's less funding, it's defunding, it's no funding. Call it what you like. There is less money there than what there was, and it is going to make something that could be positive less than it was going forward, unless something different happens soon.
Laura?
Your question was, would I, as mayor, replace the demolished structures? And my answer is, it depends on the street and the neighborhood. In some streets, it's just one house. In most streets, it's one house that begins blight. Sometimes it's just that one house is demolished and the rest of the street is maintained by the neighbors. That sometimes is all that's needed to maintain that neighborhood and to maintain that street. What I like to do, though, is get underneath these things and ask questions about why, such as, why are these houses falling into a state of disrepair in the first place? What is going on in the neighborhoods? We have affordable housing already in Syracuse. The quality of the neighborhoods, however, is deteriorated because too many of our neighborhoods are not safe. And when our neighborhoods aren't safe, we're not going to invite people, no matter how much we incentivize them with cost of housing, to come be living in the city. We used to have 220,000 people living in the city of Syracuse. Now we're down to approximately 145,000. Too many people are choosing not to live here. The neighborhoods aren't safe. So the answer is, it depends on the street. Sometimes just removing one structure is all it takes to maintain the quality of a neighborhood. In some cases, not. but it's about the safety of our neighborhoods and the quality of the life in our neighborhoods and what's going on in terms of people choosing to have their families here.
Howie?
I supported what the council did with respect to the land bank money for this year because we do face a fiscal crisis, and if we're not in charge of our own direction, it's over. And secondly, I have questions about the priorities of the land bank and the housing policy. I don't think they take care of homeowners that are sincerely trying to, catch up on their taxes. You remember the case of Calvin James on the north side, paid a few days late after putting together $11,000 after having been in Guyana because his father was dying of prostate cancer. They showed no mercy for that man. And the ones that you should show no mercy for are the delinquent absentee owners. There's a guy in the paper today saying, you didn't put money in the land bank, I'm not investing, and he don't live in the city. Ignore him. Housing development. We need neighborhood-directed planning. Because when I talk to people around the neighborhood, because it spoke on council, I see Joe Bryan and Rozzy Seals here who also told me this. We're tearing down houses that could be rehabbed. I've lived in about a dozen places around the south side, and what you find are beautiful exteriors. This used to be a real, upscale neighborhood, and inside, great wood interiors. 3 of those houses I used to live in have been torn down. They could have been rehabbed. It's more expensive, but if you build good housing, and you want to deconcentrate poverty, attract some middle-class people down here, spread the social capital around, and then have an inclusionary zoning policy so some poor people can live downtown, or how about the Inner Harbor? Talk about exclusive communities. Where's the inclusionary zoning there? So we need an inclusionary zoning ordinance. But planning should be done by neighborhoods. I would like to see TNT blown up and we create neighborhood assemblies like New England Town Meetings where you have smaller neighborhoods. I mean, our TNT sector runs from Pioneer Homes to Winkworth, and those people never talk to each other. But we have real neighborhoods in between, and those could be the planning units. And they should have a budget from the city to do local projects. They should elect officers to implement those programs, and they should participate in hearings for citywide budgeting, participatory budgeting. And so then you can decide which houses in the neighborhood on your street you want to demolish and which you want to rehab, and not leave it to this board, which has been throwing, and I don't even talk about the rent-to-own problem of people losing their homes, losing their equity to the land bank. And they should go after the landlord, not the person who's been in that rent-to-own. And we have rent-to-own because we got redlining. I better stop because
Yes,
over time.
that's a whole nother subject. Thanks, Howie. Chris?
The land bank has certainly been a benefit in many ways. It's, this has to be a block-by-block approach, as been mentioned. You don't build sustainable neighborhoods by tearing down houses and putting up, oftentimes buildings and homes that don't fit into the character of the neighborhood. We need to think about how we develop neighborhoods that are lovable and are places where people actually want to be. And to Howie's point, most of these houses, there's a number of people who are for-profit developers, and people in these neighborhoods that would love to take on these projects. Part of the challenge with the land bank is a lot of politics have been involved in it. There's on West Onondaga Street a shelter for women that's being put there. Most of the folks in the neighborhood didn't want that to go in. There were people that were willing to take that property on and build it. And it's not to say that we don't want to find housing for people that are in need, but we've devalued our neighborhoods in the city of Syracuse so much. I mean, whenever I talk about this, the first thing I do is say, why do we have a jail next to our Fine Arts Museum? We have undervalued and devalued the city of Syracuse, the property and the people that live here for decades. And we need to go house by house, block by block. There are passionate people in the city and in these neighborhoods. And it's important to remember it's not about the neighborhoods, in fact, it's about the people. So when we say we don't want to leave neighborhoods behind, we don't want to leave residents behind, we don't want to leave policy behind. I have a plan for participatory budgeting as well. It's important that folks in neighborhoods have a real say in what's happening in their neighborhood, and that hasn't happened in decades. TNT has been a good start, but with a $5,000 budget, you can basically build a bike rack. You can't really do anything. there are real opportunities to do that. We got to build a city where people want to be, and these neighborhoods will come back, and there's a lot of opportunities. So yeah, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood.
Thank you, Chris. Alfonso, for the sake of time, and followed by Raymond, please. Thank you.
You know, I still believe what I believe in terms of the land bank, and I think you guys did a good job in terms of whether you want to call it defunding it, clawing back the money. But one of the issues that I want to point out is that we don't really deal with the real issue. What's the real issue? Look at where the dilapidated houses are. Look at where they are. I live back in 9 a.m. high school. Ain't no dilapidated houses in my neighborhood. None. Not one. So when you guys set out to do this concept, and you said you talked to Charlie Perez and sat in front of Dunbar, and you was looking at houses in the area, and people were talking about these slumlords, but you had individuals who sat in City Hall and knew that these individuals who had multiple properties in our communities, they knew them personally, never went after them. But then you had the guy, say Vic, who owned the house down the street. You knew him, and you would beat him upside the head. This is what happened. So let's be honest. Let's be real honest about what city government has done to the housing situation in our communities. They knew these individuals, and they know them personally. Under my plan and my vision, I would like to bring something back like the Dollar House, where you buy a house and then you get, if we can, and I don't know with this new president, but getting state and federal dollars to rebuild a house, but you live in it for 5 years. And you change the complexity of what your neighborhood looks like. Changing how your community looks. When you have residents who own their home and can stay there for 5 years to begin to change the neighborhoods. Because we're not talking about just neighborhoods, we're talking about people. And when you look at the south side, you look at the west side, you look at the north side, you look at those areas that deal with a lot of blight, nobody is really dealing with the main issue. And the main issue is based on racism. It's based on looking at the people that you're dealing with, black and brown most of the times. And you don't bring real resources to those communities. Under my administration, we want to deal with the real problem. And let's look at how we can begin to change the complexity of those communities by rebuilding those homes. Some need to go down. We could do deconstruction, construction. Those that we can rebuild, we rebuild them. We put people back in. And then the last thing I want to say is that when we talk about police officers, firefighters, and teachers who don't live in the city, encourage them to come back into the city and get into those houses so that they can help increase our overall coffer. Right now we have 48% of the people paying 100% of the taxes. We cannot continue to be sustainable and move our city, our municipality, with that in hand. So if you want a real plan, Alfonso Davis is your man.
Thank you, Alfonso.